Hi, this is Paul Konkowski with the Systems Conference. I'm here with my longtime friend Brad Larsen from Rentworks Property Management and multiple other businesses. I don't know what business Brad has not been in, but he's definitely been in a lot of our fields in property management. And I wanted to start off by introducing Brad. When I first started in NARPM, I met Brad Larsen, and it was probably about 10 years ago. And Brad Larsen was growing pretty quickly at the time. He was adding a couple hundred doors a year, but he was involved in everything. He was like any one of us. He was the owner operator doing lots of stuff. He was the one who was starting. He was one of the very first ones who did like the 3-tiered pricing system and kind of gave me, wow, this is, he's always, I say, one of the people who made my company what it was, because he was one of the first 3 people that I met in property management. I had Keith Becker, nice as could be, pat you on the back and tell you good job. I had Lisa Ford in my market, great person. I had Brad Larsen, who I think pushed me over the top, told me, you got to charge more, because I was charging ridiculous amounts, wasn't doing a good job. So you need those people in your life. Those people will tell you the honest truth. And I've always appreciated that from Brad. I've worked with Brad, amazing, amazing person. And if he tells you something and it's a little blunt, he's just being honest. He's just trying to get past all the BS and tell you what you need to do. Brad,
that's great, Paul.
That's a long intro.
Paul, I'm waiting for that royalty check. I'll still be looking for that in the mail. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? And you'll just keep looking for it. It'll be there someday.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Thanks for the warm intro. And yeah, sometimes things can be not sugar-coated when you're talking to me. I mean, in my background, I was a former infantry officer and, went to a military school, and that's kind of how we spoke to each other. That's our love language, is just not sugar-coating things and making things happen that way.
And you know what? I've actually taken that to heart myself. I've actually done some consulting for people, and I tell them, do you want to grow and be pretty profitable a lot quicker, and I will probably say some things that's going to hurt your feelings, or would you like me to be your friend and tell you how wonderful you are? You can pay me a lot of money and you're probably not going to get very far. So I think that's where people need to look at it. I really appreciated the honest, direct talk that you had, but you also followed it up with giving me, I remember door hangers. I never used them, but it was really cool idea. You had all these cool ideas back then where you would rent a property out and then you would put, door hangers on every door in the house around, like, hey, we're renting this house, call us with any problems. But that wasn't the reason you were calling with problems. You were doing it because you were showing them, hey, this house is renting to us, let's get some more. You had some really cool growth ideas throughout the years. You've always had them. Do you remember those ones back in the day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are we call it the 10-10 rule. So the 5 homes to the left, 5 homes to the right, and 10 homes across the street. Anytime you put up a new listing for rent or for sale, those door hangers make a great little addition. It gives you an excuse to go walk the neighborhood and tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, and you also had lots of different, you were, I think, one of the first ones with a 3-tiered pricing system. You had a lot of different things that you were doing different 10 years ago. You kind of, like, I look at you and I look at like Scott Brady as 2 people that didn't follow the normal property manager route 10 years ago. Very, very different paths, but you weren't about, hey, let's just do it the way everybody else does it. I'm going to do it the Brad way. And you even, I think your company originally was Brad Larsen Property Management, wasn't it, at the beginning? And then that was one of the big mistakes you said, always call it something different, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I originally named it Larsen Properties. It was out of my garage, and it was a small thing, and it was just my own little brokerage because I left Keller Williams at that point. And of course, it's a big mistake. That one of the biggest mistakes you'll make in business is to name it after yourself, especially if you're a startup, because then it becomes you, and nothing but you. And when it's time to like maybe turn it over to let somebody else run or to even potentially sell it, it's just going to be that much more difficult to convey that name. So I would always recommend to somebody just a neutral name. That way it's just not all about you. Now that can be great in the beginning. It's like the whole stick when you sit somebody at a kitchen table and say, it's me, and I'm it. I mean, you can call me 24/7, and it's my name on the door, and I'm responsible for everything. But then you'll quickly grow out of that as you start to add more homes or you start to get more sophisticated in your business practices, that eventually you're going to want a nice, neutral, even name. It would be great to name it after your market. Like if it was, pick your market. If it was San Antonio Property Management, that'd be the greatest thing ever to name it. But obviously those have been gone forever and ever unless you buy that name somehow. But it comes down to it making something simple, making something that's going to look good on a URL. And that's part of what you want to focus on your naming if you're starting at that point, or you can rebrand.
And when I met you, you were doing everything in the business. And within 2 years after I met you, you were pretty much not out of the business, but you were on weekly calls, making sure your lead team was doing things, making sure things were going on. And then you started multiple other companies, including an amazing conference. I always say it was the second best conference behind mine.
I think you're right on that. The conference was a fun run. Things got a little difficult with the hotels and just got really, really expensive the last couple of years. And so we just kind of shelved it. It was a good time while we had it. And that was one of the side businesses that I was able to do after I was able to put my company in a good path to where it wasn't all about me. It was kind of like the 80-20 rule. 80% they ran by themselves, 20% they needed some of my guidance and oversight. But once you could get a good footing on the accounting side and the operations side, you can start to do other ventures. And you really do owe it to your team and owe it to your business to get to that point so you can build other things that might be additional options that you can throw into the business. So you could build a sales faction. You could do that and build that up to where you're selling more homes or selling as many homes. Or like you mentioned Scott Brady earlier, he put his management side enough on autopilot to where he could build up an HOA management side or a commercial management side. So there's lots of good ways to skin that cat to make it to where, okay, if I can get good at these operations, like going to a systems conference and learning how to make these things flow on a continuous basis, and learning how to turn those things over to where people will let them run them for you, you'll be able to get on a good path to where you can start doing other things that contribute to the business and create more opportunities, which is really what you do as a CEO/owner/founder.
And, I always look at the different things. You're going to be talking about basically having a business, and when life hits you with a baseball bat basically and knocks you down, how you can either feel sorry for yourself or get back up and become stronger. Is that correct? What I mean, kind of give us a little bit of rundown what you're going to be talking about, because I'm really excited. You're going to be on the main stage, and this was something that I had heard back that you were going to talk about a long time ago, and then it was something that didn't happen because it couldn't happen at that time. But now you can discuss what happened that really kind of knocked your business over but made it stronger.
Yeah, it's really a story of everything's not just a hockey stick as far as your growth. It's not always going to be straight up at an angle to where you're adding 500 homes a year and you don't lose anything. There's always going to be trials and tribulations along the way, and several things that we'll talk about are getting knocked down by having bad staff, or getting stolen from, or seeing things from the government come your way that you just didn't expect. So it's going to be kind of a story about that, and some of the things that the lessons learned are going to be the most important part. Because, I remember Bob Walters for a long time. He was the guru of property management in Australia, and he spoke at my first conference. And he was like a 40-year property management veteran there in Australia, Bob Walters. And he always said if he wrote a book about his mistakes, it would fill a volume, it would fill a library. And that's true. I mean, I've never been a perfect businessman, but I had one of my near and dear commanders back in the Army, making a mistake as a young lieutenant. And he would say, you know what, you made a lot of mistakes, but you went 110%. So I can forgive a lot of that because you were trying your best and going as hard as you can. And, I remember the story of a couple of friends, Steve Rosenberg and Pete Newbig. They had a partnership a long time ago, and they're absolute opposites of each other. And they had a great friendship, great partnership. And I know them and respect both of them. But, one was going to go 100 miles per hour, and one was going to be, we got to be perfect before we move an inch. And you got to find a healthy balance. And I think this is where your systems conference is going to fit in perfect, because if you can improve your systems, it allows you to go a little bit faster, maybe get some more growth, and build your business to where you like it and want to respect it. Because just this weekend, for example, on the mastermind group. So for those that don't know, we founded the Property Management Mastermind Facebook group, and we're up over 12,000 members now. And one of the posts this weekend was, okay, what's some of the things I need to do to allow myself to have a weekend, right? And I remember that. I mean, I remember getting a call center put in. This was 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. It was right before July 4th weekend. And we implemented a 365, days and nights call center type thing just to take our maintenance calls. And that was a revelation. And I was small at the time. I think it was maybe 75 homes or something under management. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I have this time where I don't have to answer the phone this weekend from crazy not crazy. They were mad because obviously it's July 4th weekend and their AC is out. Okay, they're rightfully so, they're mad. But those are crazy calls that you don't want to get because you have to jump on them right then and there. And I think that's going to be reflective of what you're teaching in your conference is how do you get out of the systems every day to where you can create a healthy balance in your life?
I think that my kids always notice that too. Like sometimes I wouldn't be present when I really wanted to be present with family because I'd get a call and it'd be like in the middle of a game for my son or something, and I'd be like trying to figure out how to do it. So getting those things in place is huge. And I know that you suffered some government regulations, and you're in California, correct? Like you're in a state that you have to worry about government regulations, correct, Brad?
No, I'm in Texas, man. It's so surprising that it happened here in Texas, and I know that's a leading question for me because you were joking with me on that one, thinking I'm in California. If I could reach through this call, I'd strangle you right now. But let's get past that. And
no, I'm trying to basically say that people always think, oh, you only have to worry about regulations if you're in California, Washington, or Hawaii. Like we have to worry about regulations as property managers in every state. Now, when a state like Texas was always, oh, well, that had happened in California, it wouldn't happen in Texas. I mean, that's been the ongoing joke for 20 years. But regulations can happen in any state in the United States now, correct?
It is. And here's the thing that people need to take from this call and take from that presentation at your conference is it's the people that decide the regulations are going to be the ones that determine your outcome. You can feel like you're following the law. You can feel that you're following your vendor's distinct advice and they can tell you you're good. But if it gets down to a regulator and they say you're not good, what do you want to do? Do you want to spend half of your fortune to fight it, to continue to say you're right? Or do you just end up saying, okay, well, their definition of the rule is different from what my definition of the rule was told to me. So I guess I just have to give in and do whatever they want. It's just like, anytime you get a bad judge, they're going to say the same thing. Well, okay, you murdered somebody or you stole something. Well, it's going to be up to the judge to determine your outcome, regardless of the laws or regardless of the regulations. I know those are terrible examples, but my point is it's up to the deciding authority whether you're right or wrong. So even if you feel you're right, the definition of that could change. So it's very cumbersome upon you to make sure that you're flowing how you should be. But I also caution people that just because you think you're in the right, you may not be, because regulations do change. And the vendors that are telling you that you're good, they may not be giving you the whole truth, or they're telling you that you're good for their benefit.
Well, and the reason I say that is because, when I had 40 doors, I got an $8,000 fine, which is like crushed me because I had military people and I didn't fill out the right form because they weren't California residents, but they lived in California. So I was confused on something. It was an $8,000 fine and I had to move on from it. Trust me, it never happened the rest of my business. But if I were to do a topic on it, people would be like, he's from California, we don't have to worry about it. That's why it's relevant for you. Because if you're from Indiana or you're from Chicago, if you get the wrong person, what I'm getting from this is you could be in the right from everything you believe in and everything how you read it and even what it is. But if someone misinterprets it, it doesn't matter if you're in the right. And so when this happened to you, you didn't sit back and cry and why. Yes, it was hard but you changed your business. And from what I heard, you told me you changed your business, you made some changes, and it made it better than it was before. You moved on, and you didn't say, woe is me, life is hard, I want to whine about it. You said, okay, this is a setback. We're not going to have the profits we had in previous years this year, but we're going to move forward.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it's always been. Went through a divorce. I went through a, big embezzlement case. I went through this whole thing with the government regulations with the Department of Insurance. And so all those lessons learned will come out of this presentation to where people can set up their business to where, okay, if you are, touching the limit a little bit, or you're not locked down in your accounting or your hiring practices, I mean, we'll go over some of that stuff to make sure that people walk away with something that they can apply. It's not just a story about, oh, woe is me, let's sit back and look at it. But I'm going to try to teach some people like, okay, this is what I did to screw up. This is what I did to fix it. This is what you should take away from this and what you should apply to your business. So when you go home and start working on these things, you can avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. And I hope that's what people come out of the presentation with, a few lessons learned that they can take home.
And that's you, Brad. I mean, you're great at that. I mean, all of us should be like that. All of us should want our fellow property managers to succeed, because there's some people out there like, oh, my competitor just got a huge fine, good for me. No, it's eventually going to come back to you. We need to stick together as a group. Our biggest competitor is the self-managed landlord, is the government taking away our profits. Those are our biggest competitors, not the competitor down the street. We need to work together. We need to make sure that, if I can stop you from hitting, a pylon, and you can stop me from hitting a tree, then we all can get down the road better.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll probably talk upon as well is the new NAR regulations that have come down. The National Association of Realtors took that large. Basically, they lost a lawsuit. And so they had to change their regulations and the way they do things in their practices through a big settlement. And so I'll touch on that a little bit during the presentation. It may not even affect some people because there's a lot of states where you don't have to be a licensed realtor, Idaho, for example, a few others. And so it may not affect everybody, but I will tell you that there's things in there that will affect us all. And this is why one of the reasons we put on a call a few weeks ago as the local San Antonio chapter is we needed to address it as a group to say, look, these things are changing. This is where you're going to get in trouble. And we envision that the steering is going to be an issue. And steering, when you start talking commissions with real estate agents and you start talking leasing, it gets pretty tedious. And so we're trying to avoid negativity in our industry. And this is what I'm hoping to achieve by that, by just kind of raising the flag to this issue, is that, hey, if we don't address this now, the Department of Justice will address it for us and come down on us even harder than it is. So it's something that everybody's got to be aware of it. They could discount it completely because it may not even affect them at all. Some of the markets like you may be in, or others, where they don't even pay leasing commissions, and some do on such a rare occasion. But I do think it's going to garner awareness, at least into this issue, because people will know what they're talking about and be able to address their owners in a more educated fashion.
It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to your talk. I like, you always go in depth into a lot of things, but this is going to be a very personal one. You haven't done this talk before. I'm very excited to hear this, to see what you're going to talk about. And one of the really cool things is you're in San Antonio. San Antonio is, there's not many flights that go in and out of San Antonio. There's nothing direct. It's not like this, but it's a huge city. I think it's the sixth largest city in the United States. And you have quite a few NARPM property managers. And what I like about the San Antonio chapter is you guys have some really big players in San Antonio. And you guys get along really well. And you guys actually help each other. Is that correct?
Well, that's spot on. I mean, I was talking about that call we did a few weeks ago. That was right before the NAR regulations took effect in our local board of realtors. And we initiated a call, and it was like 150 people that jumped on it. To your point, I mean, Brian Birdie was on that call, and he and I were discussing that exact point you made earlier. It's like, look, gang, we're not in competition with each other on this issue. We all want to get on the same page, because our biggest competitor is not each other. It's all of our individual self-managing landlords out there that are doing it themselves. That's our competitor. So we want to get on the same page and look as professional as we can as a market. We are in one of the most competitive markets in the country. We have some of the best property management companies right here in the metro. And if you did a Google search, I mean, you would find 25 to 50 solid real estate and property management companies just from the one Google search. So yeah, we're competitive here. And it just seems like we toss around the people that, it's like I lose one and Birdie gains one and Birdie gains one and I lose one. It's all these things that we do. Sometimes we pass each other's leftovers to another competitor. So it's really one of those things where we feel the same way you mentioned earlier, is we want to work together as a group. And that way we're doing the same things and we all get together. What's the old saying? A rising tide lifts all boats. And that's kind of the bottom line of it.
Well, I just think San Antonio's really stepped up their game, because you can go places in the Midwest and have not one single good property manager in the entire town. I mean, I've looked at rental properties and interviewed 3 property managers, and they didn't know anything about, like they just, we give them the keys, we do this. They were like, it was like the 1970s, 80s. And I'm like, you guys, what software do you use? We don't use software. We keep it in a little notebook. It's all paper and pen, that's something that's always impressive, is you are in a market where people believe in property management and have stepped up the game. But I think that's true through you guys have had multiple NARPM presidents that have come out of San Antonio for the national thing. You've had a lot of, you were really involved in the accounting standards for NARPM. So you've had a lot of, you guys as a group have really done a lot to step up the whole community nationwide. Would you agree?
And that's the point. I'm actually a really big advocate for more licensing. I think that would do the entire industry a benefit. I feel that every single property manager should have some sort of at least a real estate license, and if not a distinct property management license, because we owe it to the consumers, the tenants, the owners that we represent. We really owe it to them, because we are down and dirty money managers. We have $1.5 million coming in and out every month for our rent roll. That's a lot of money that's changing hands. And so we need to be on top of our game with the accounting side. And I just feel that it's such a big responsibility, because you have potentially, rookie real estate agents out there consummating a lease agreement that really has no end. They can last for a decade or a century, because lease agreements can keep going on and on and on forever and ever. And I just think that our industry needs more regulation as far as property management, to make sure that we have licenses. And it's not hard. It's just far it is in the state of Texas, we have 2 designations that's all they'd have to do. Go get those two designations for your brokerage. You take a test and boom, you have a property management license. You are good to go. Because in those courses that are well put on, they talk about trust accounting. They talk about the deeper details of security deposit. They talk about writing a lease agreement the right way. They talk about all the owner issues that we need to understand. So I've been a big fan of that. And as much as I am a Texan and we like no regulations, I do feel that having the Wild West in what we do is not the right way to go. If you look at a parallel, they don't do that in the mortgage industry. So why are we doing it?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of these industries that are doing things the right way. I just feel like getting a property management license or getting licensed to do property management in California was a joke. Pretty much there's no instruction. You didn't have to have any working with another company. Well, I went over to Nevada. It was a lot more stringent. The licensing, you had to have a separate license to be a property manager. You have to be a broker to be a property manager. You can work for someone, but we have to turn our trust accounting in to the division every year with showing that we triple reconciled and showing different things. It's just a lot more regulated. And and we always talk about California being so regulated. California is super regulated in a lot of things. But when it comes to giving out real estate license, the test is about what the style of roof it is. How does that help you sell a house or rent a house? People need actual experience. For me, it was NARPM. I was a property manager, but then NARPM showed me how to be an actual real property manager, how to do it the right way. And it was people like you and Brian Birdie and Keith Becker and people like that were like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. And so at this conference, I really try to get the old feel of what NARPM was. I feel like when 10 years ago, it was like when you guys were at the Orleans for broker owner and everyone was dying of the smoke, but it was just all about property managers talking about what they were doing. And that's what my conference really wants to do. We want you to get to know other property managers, get to know other people, so that you come back with phone numbers of people you can call, of groups that you can get. You're in a mastermind group, correct, Brad? And you've run a lot of mastermind groups, but you're in a pretty big one, at least you were 4 years ago. Are you still in that one?
Yeah, it's right on the Facebook, the Property Management Mastermind Facebook group. So we're on there all the time, making good posts, making comments, trying to encourage good discussions on there. And I think that's an excellent forum for people to do masterminds. And of course, we had the conference. That was the Property Management Mastermind Conference. And so those things have always kind of been in our forethought, is how do we share with each other. And of course, we got our little tight circle of, there's a few property managers that I can reach out to at any time and start to, war game a few things as far as what we need to do or couldn't do. At a certain level, you get to a point like, okay, if I go to this conference, what am I going to get out of it? I don't know, you might have seen this too, where I wouldn't call it conference burnout, but it's just like conference, I don't know what the word is, but you start to go to these conferences, I've already seen that, I'm already doing that. Okay, I've heard all that before, I can't do that in my market. Why am I here? But that's not necessarily the best attitude, because you want to get out there and see what new things are coming down and what ideas you can implement, what improvements you can make, and just don't sit on your laurels and have a company just kind of run flat. Right now it's one of the toughest markets that we've been in the country. The sales are absolutely abysmal. Property management has taken a turn for the worse as far as in our market. It's just very, very difficult. Owners are self-managing like crazy because they can't afford to pay a property manager. I mean, we've seen a decline in business just the last 12 months, 18 months. I think that's across the board. Leasing has been very difficult. So we're in difficult times as managers, which needs you to make sure that you are running correctly and ready for the improvement. You see the dump truck behind me, the big Lego dump truck right there, Paul? Yep. So I have that behind me as a reminder, because you need to have your business ready to where a dump truck like that backs up to your front door and dumps 100 homes into your business tomorrow. That's kind of been my attitude. So if we had a big investor, or if we had 20 big investors that said, okay, we have 100 homes for you to manage today, we can do it. We're ready for growth at any time like that, where it's not a 5-alarm fire and you have a freak out and you're just not ready for it. So I always think you want to be ready for growth, and that's one of the techniques that I remind myself with.
And you've always talked about that, and I know you're still an owner of the for BDM role, getting a BDM. Are you still involved in? Because that was the big thing that Brian Hughes always talked about. Like Brian Hughes. I mean, I think it is top year. He brought in 300 doors.
Yeah, for RentWorks, he did a 450 door year. And Brian Hughes runs BizDev Mastermind, and he's an excellent business development trainer. I'm minority share in that business, so he does everything. But I helped him get that thing launched up, and of course we work together a lot on just making sure that he's on top of his game. But him and his wife Stephanie, they do a great job in helping property management companies hire a new business development manager and training them and keeping them going and setting goals and making sure they're doing the right thing. They help with all that. So they're fantastic trainers. And I think the industry needs more of that because that's been a challenge for business owners, is to let that part of the business go, meaning that they need to have somebody that is focusing on sales and focusing on follow-up. And we recommend to use Lead Simple. That's always been a big vendor that we like. I think their platform is fantastic, but setting all that up is tedious. And the best practices that go in that setup to make sure that you're doing the correct follow-up and generating new business is part of it. Because as I've mentioned, the market's kind of in a downturn. And if you lose 100 homes a year, you got to gain 100 homes a year just to stay even, right? Or 10 homes a year, you got to gain 10 homes a year, whatever the number is, because you have to constantly be concerned with churn. And churn's going to be from all the different reasons that people don't like to talk about. Like maybe your owner client's a jerk and you just got to fire them. Maybe they're going to self-manage. Maybe they're going to sell their home. Maybe they're going to have you sell their home. All these reasons for churn. Maybe they fire you for whatever reason. All the reasons you can think of for churn, it's not your fault. I would only say probably 25% to 20% is your fault as the manager, like where you make mistakes. The rest of the time you can't control. So you got to be able to replace that churn every year. And I would say the average management company's got a 20% churn. And maybe that's high, maybe that's low. I'm just picking the average, 20%.
Oh, that's that. Yeah. And I mean, I always said if the owner's going to sell their home and they use us, I would have all my owners sell their home, because that's a great thing. But you do want to replace that. But if you have 20 owners a year selling their homes and using you, that's a night. Even if you're a small company, if you're a big company, you have 100 owners using you a year selling their homes. Well, that then more than pays for advertising, BDMs, adding more doors. I mean, that's a huge. I mean, in California, the average commission's $15,000 to $30,000. So in Texas, it's close to that now. Texas, your prices are, your average home is what, 400,000 now in San Antonio?
Right, we're around the 400 to 450 range, and a big part of that is capturing those sales. And this is where we talk about putting in a business development manager that can help you potentially capture sales or free up one of your key agents' time to capture those sales. Because you just think it's not that easy. Oh, it's in my management agreement. They have to have me sell their home. No, they don't. They can fire you, and they can have their cousin list their home for sale. They can have their agent that they met at the grocery store last night list their home for sale. All these reasons. So as part of good business practices, you have to continually ping your owners, say, if you want to sell, think of me. If you want to sell, think of me. Just over and over on a monthly basis, to where you're not poaching from your own inventory, you're capturing that sale. So potentially you can sell it to another investor so the home never leaves your inventory. Those are things that we bring up all the time, and that's what part of things you're going to learn in good business development practices.
That was one of the things we did really well with my company. My wife was in charge of sales, and we just had a lot of good contacts. We knew what was going on with the homes, and I mean, if you're not doing that, you're leaving 6-7 figures, just letting it go out the door. I mean, in that, if you're selling those homes, then your business can afford to get, hit by something else and move on. You really have to have those multiple revenue streams. So when one revenue stream starts to not get as lucrative, the other revenue stream picks up for it.
Yeah, it's just a reflection of a down market right now. One of our best years, I think my agents, they sold like 60 homes out of our inventory. They sold like 17 this year so far. I mean, it's just, off the chart slow. I just read an article this morning that they were reporting the sales market as the slowest it's been, the slowest July in the last dozen years, according to all the stats they've been keeping. So not being a whiner, this is all going to be, it's one of those, we're all taking a hit, but better times are coming. So just be prepared. Have that dump truck ready.
Exactly. We go through these. If sales are slow, it might be a good time for us to start buying inventory ourselves. I mean, that's once the prices start to drop dramatically. That's when I like to add my inventory myself. I mean, that another stream of revenue. You don't lose it. You keep it. 3 years from now, it's up more. Then you sell it to an investor. I mean, there's lots of ways to look at, what happens in this market. The market's not changed. We've gone through 2009, we've gone through COVID, we've gone through so many different things in our business cycles. You just have to learn how to be profitable in each cycle. So, well, Brad, I'm looking forward to having you at the conference. I'm looking forward to you speaking. It's going to be very exciting. You're going to be on the main stage. You're bringing the head of RentWorks, the person who runs your day-to-day with you. She's going to be going to the conference, learning from the conference. You went to the conference when we first started, and then, like I said, then you focused on your conference. If you liked Brad's conference, you'll love our conference. Brad's conference, a lot of small group, a lot of interaction. That's how ours has always been built on. Ours was built on 15 people at the first one. It's built on that small interaction, getting to know people, getting to talk to people. Even though we're much bigger now, we still try to keep that. So, Brad, I'm really excited for you to be there, and have a great rest of your week.
Appreciate it, Paul. Look forward to seeing you there.